Welcome back, everybody. My name is Mahmoud. Welcome back to my channel where we discuss everything about web development, specifically front-end web development. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and you can see more videos about everything related to React. In this very short series, 3-video series, I'm going to be reviewing the state of state management libraries in React. So I will go through different state management libraries in React and the way people manage global state in React. And I will be reviewing that by building a simple app that we will go through now, and just to show you guys what are the different patterns available. And I will give you some thoughts as well about which kind of pattern that I think is really good pattern and which patterns are a bit old and shouldn't be starting a project with nowadays. So I will do this in 3 videos. It's going to be a mini series. This is video number 1, and in this video we will talk about how React gives you specific APIs to manage state globally in React apps. So that will be the first part, which is React itself. The next video, we are also going to discuss how you can use Redux with React to handle state management. And the third and the last part is going to be using Mobx. And I believe these are the 3 most popular state management tools in React. And if there is another state management tool that you would like me to review, you can also write that in the comments below, and I will get cracking. All right, enough with the introductions, and let's get started with the state of state management in React, part 1, using React itself. As usual, I would like to always discuss what is actually the problem, because you need to keep that in mind before you approach anything, in my opinion, which is like, just a refresher, we're going to do a mini series about managing a state in React. But what is actually the problem? And the thing is that React data flow is perfect, but it's actually quite limiting. So if you've been subscribed to this channel, you have seen this diagram before multiple times, but let's go through it again. So in React, we have components, component tree, right? So and in the component tree, we have the parent component, we have a sub-parent component, and then we have child component. And what happens is the state will kind of live in the parent component, and they sometimes call it the container. And this is where you do your API calls. This is where you handle like the part of the state. Say, for example, this is the page container where you do your API calls for the data you need for this page. And then you have another children component, and these components kind of receive that state as props, and that's how you render stuff. And every time that main piece of state changes, you re-render the children component that are consuming those pieces of state. And of course, needless to say, these children component and the subparent can have their own state as well, but I'm talking about React data flow in terms of like fetching remote data and doing API requests and so on, and kind of like feeding that data through the tree. So this is the way it works in React. Now, this is perfect because it's one-way data flow. So it goes from the top to the bottom, but then it becomes a bit limiting when you want to trigger a re-render from the child down there. And there are ways you can do that through props. So you can pass the state variable and the state setting function, both of them in prop, and then trigger the setting, the set state function from the child component, and that will actually change the state. But again, you go into prop drilling, and it's really not the best way to do things. But like, yeah, again, the problem here is our apps are getting bigger, and the tree is getting more and more complex, and sometimes we need to be changing a state that is global in the whole app from one of the children component, which is like a deeply nested component and so on. So how do you do that? That is the question. So the first problem is the data flow is perfect because it's consistent and you can see things and you can expect it and you understand it, but the problem is a little bit limiting. Now, I just mentioned global state, but you know what, like it's very difficult to have a web app nowadays without global state. So you can have like a state in this page or a state into that part of the app and so on, but then you are eventually going to have to manage global state. You have a user, you have, I don't know, you have so many things. You have the user has maybe packages, or he has some other things that have to be available globally for every parts of the app to consume. Or maybe most parts of the app will consume it. So you don't want to be able to do, you don't want to have to do all these API requests specifically for different parts of the app to be able to render them. And sometimes architecting the tree so that you can have that piece of state in that area wouldn't really make sense, because sometimes you want to get that state in this part of the app, but then you want to get the same state also in quite a separate part of the app, and then you'll be forced to put them all in the same, like, kind of like subtree, but that doesn't make sense at some point. So anyway, global state is inescapable. You really have to manage global state. There's no way that you can have a web app without having global state, and managing global state can be very messy. Like I just mentioned, sometimes you are limited by the way you structure your tree, and then you would want to think, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to restructure the tree, but usually that can be a bit annoying, and yeah, your data flow shouldn't really like limit you the way you write the components. You write the components based on the way you think things should work, or the way you want to organize things. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, you can actually pass the state variable and the state setting function as props, and then you keep passing them through the parents and until you go to the deeply nested children. And from there, you can set the state, and that will trigger re-render normally, but that can be very, very messy. Okay, so those are the kind of like the three parts of the problem. Data flow is perfect, but it's a bit limiting. You have to have global state if you want to have any like good web app that does useful stuff. And managing global state can be quite messy, actually. All right, cool. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this episode is going to be focused on what React offers us to solve these problems. And in the next video, we will talk about Redux, and the last video is going to be about Mobx. So let's start talking about how React solves these problems. Okay, cool. So here, there are different ways to handle this in React, of course, but I will talk about the way that I think makes sense. And there are other ways as well, but like, yeah, there's only one more way, which is use reducer hook. I don't want to go into that because we will be talking about that and the way you actually use it with Redux. So it's the same pattern, and I want to focus this series on focusing on patterns. We are reviewing patterns more than libraries in a way, because you can always use the library, but yeah, it's more about how you should write your code in a way. Okay, cool. So the React solution that I suggest is to use the context hook, and that will solve most of the problem. And if you are not aware of the context hook, is basically you provide that piece of state to every single component that is being encompassed by the context provider. And like I said, it provides global state to any children it encompasses. That's beautiful. And the second thing that I would also like to suggest is you add React custom hooks as well with the context hook, and you get really, really, really good solutions. And if you don't know what custom hooks are, they're basically stateful functions. And in these stateful functions, you can handle API calls, and you can handle business logic, and so on. And if you want, which is I'm going to show you in this video, you can also directly interact with the context, making it a really, really, really powerful pattern. And we will go through this right now, and I will show you all of this in details. I just want to give you an overview of what's up. All right, so enough with the theory, and let's talk about the app that we have. So in this app, what we have here is we have a login component, and in the login component, you can type a username, or sorry, like a user number like this. And what happens here is that this component is actually assigning the value that comes from the API into this component, which is part of the navbar. This is a separate component, and this is a separate component. So this small component is actually managing the global state in the app, and then you can log out, and then the user vanishes and so on. And there's a bit of a small trick here that you can take a look at the code later, where I have mapped the user numbers to specific IDs from the user provider. And yeah, it's simple stuff. You can take a look at it, but I want to focus here on the things that we're trying to achieve, which is we have this small component, and this small component is actually managing the state in everywhere in the app, basically. And if you put very, very small, very like simple error handling as well. Okay, cool. So this is the objective that we're trying to get at, and let's jump into what I call the basic app. So this is the basic branch, or in this case, actually, it's a master branch, just in case you check out the Git repo. And what I have here is a fully functional component that actually gets data from the API, but it doesn't do anything with it. And you can see here I have a couple of just placeholders. Here should be the username, and here should be the avatars, and so on. And what I want to do now is actually start refactoring things. So let me walk you through what is happening. Let me move this here. What is happening with the code? So let's put them side by side like that. Yes. Okay, so what do we have here? What we have here is actually a very simple login component. And this is a next app, by the way. And what happens here is I'm using Chakra UI, and we basically have the hero section, which is this component. And we have the details card, which is this component. And then we have the login component right there. And what happens is that the login component has some logic on it. And that logic is what actually goes ahead and fetches the API. I will destroy this, so don't have to worry about it. Cool. And then what happens is once we submit that form, we go out and we console log the user, and we get the user, which is actually this function here, get user, which is going to make an API request and so on. So the first thing I will do to make this a little bit better is to refactor this logic into custom hook. So let's actually start by doing that, shouldn't we? Okay, hooks, and then inside that, I'll use user.ts. Good. So now, oh, sorry guys. So now I have this hook file, and in this hook file, what I will do is I'm going to write a function. So this is basically the custom hook is nothing but a stateful function. So you can do something like this, export function, but it has to start with use. So it has to have the word use on it. So what I will do is I'm going to export function called use user, and in that function, let me actually stack them side by side, and let's hide the drawer. All right, so what I will do is very simple. I'm simply going to take out these pieces of state. Actually, all of this will work. Yeah. No, aside from the state. So let's take out these two things, which is the local states. So what happens is, philosophically or theoretically, when you think about custom hooks, it's basically a function with its own state internally, right? And the way you would want to think about it is that you want to move the states that belong to the logic. So the idea from building your custom hook is to encompass the logic itself, the logic to, in this case, to grab the user, and also to encompass the different types of states that will be used with that user as well. And that's why you can see what I've done here is I have moved these two states, loading and error states, because they actually live inside the hook itself. They are related to the business logic, right? And I left the user state itself in the login component, because that user state is basically going to live in that login component, and later we're gonna handle how we're gonna do with it later. But right now I just want to refactor the logic itself. So what I will do here instead of, so what we have here is we have loading state, we have error state, and we don't have use, oopsie, we don't have use state. So let's import that, clean this up a little bit. Cool, so we have use state here. And what we have here is, instead of setting state instead of setting user to data, what I will do is I'm going to return data. I'm going to return data, right? And what else I'm gonna do? I'm gonna actually return this. So what happens is we are going to return whatever is going to happen here. So what you want to return the result of using that hook. So what I will do is I'm going to return loading. I'm going to return loading and error itself. Yep, I'm going to return loading state, error state, and a get user function. Get user function. Okay, cool. So those will be the return values here. Something is a bit wrong. I think, yeah, I think I missed this. Yes, curly brace. Okay, good. So now what we have here is we have a custom hook, and that custom hook is returning three things, right? It's returning a function to get the user, and this function takes a user number. And this function, when correct, it's actually going to return the data which is coming from the API if that exists. And if that's not true, it's going to set the error to error, and it's going to eventually set the loading to false. And you can see how I will actually just move this, like how this is going to be plug and play over here. So what I will do now is I am going to leave the user state here locally, but what I will do here is I'm going to get all of these. So get loading state, get the error, and get the function to get user as well. And we will grab all of these from use user. Yes, from use user, and I'm going to import that. And yeah, so now we have the loading and we have error, and these are the states that come from here. And we are not going to set it. That will be handled already by my custom hook. Okay, good. And we have the get user as a function as well. Okay, cool. So now, supposedly, if everything is good, what I will do here, await get user with the user number, and instead of this, yes, instead of this will return the data. Remember this. So what we'll do here is const stress equals data, and we will set the user to the res. Actually, just change this to data, just to keep it consistent. Okay, so good. So what we do here is we are going to trigger this function here, right? And because that get user is a function that we are exporting, and what happens here is we are returning the response that comes back from the API. Cool. Let me try this and cross my fingers. Here we go. So if I click user one, again, it's the same exact thing, but now it's refactored into a totally separate custom hook. And in my opinion, this is like the first thing you want to do if you want to handle something globally, is you just refactor it first in a global custom hook. And from there, we can start worrying about how that piece of state is going to reach everywhere. Otherwise, what you would find yourself doing is keeping that logic to get the user specifically where you are going to get the global, where you're going to declare the global state, and that can get very, very messy. So don't do that. Okay. So refactor everything into a custom hook, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use the context hook to move the user state here, move this user state here to be a global state. But before we do this, I want to demonstrate something here, which is the fact that those custom hooks are nothing but stateful functions. And to show you that they actually have their internal state completely separated, what I will do is I'm actually going to render another login component in the hero section, for example. So this will look ugly but let me just put a login component here. Okay, cool. So what will happen now, what I want to demonstrate to you now is that this, if I do this now, you can see this login was loading, but this wasn't loading at all, because these two components, these two custom hooks, these two different invocation of the custom hook have their own internal state. And that's why I said earlier, you want to move the state that's related to your business logic into the custom hook, but you want to leave the global state, or the state that you're actually going to use in your app, away from the custom hook. Okay, that's for now, but later we can integrate both of them. But for now, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Your custom hook integrates your business logic. And whenever you do that business logic, you might need that specific local state, and that you include into your custom hook, but then you leave the actual state somewhere else. And you can see even the error, I think, is the same one. Yeah, the error is also local here, local to this component, but most importantly, this piece of state, which is coming from the custom hook, this piece of state, right? Is only available to that component because this instance of the login component is the one that invoked this function, and this loading state is completely different from the one invoked by this component. So this was, yeah, just a minor thing that I actually wanted to highlight. Good, good, good. Okay, let's keep going. What we have now is we have a login component with its own user state, and we don't like that because that is local state now. So what we want to do is actually move that state in the tree to make sure that it is actually like a global state. And the way you do that in React is through context. Okay, cool. And the way we are going to do that is basically we will have a component called UserProvider. So I will start by doing that. So we call this UserProvider. UserProvider. Good. And that UserProvider is going to be a stateful function component. That's simple. And again, this is UserProvider. Cool. And this will be function component. Apparently, this is not. This is deprecated. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Anywho, okay, cool. And the first thing we're going to do here when you want to use context is to create the context itself. And this is what I'm going to do here. So export const user context. Oopsie, user context, and user context is going to going to be the return value of the create context from React. Beautiful, good stuff from React. Okay, and let's have the initial value as an empty object for now, and I will fix the typing in a second, but this is the first thing. Cool. And the reason I did that because we want to render userprovider.pro provider. Actually, something here is wrong. Sorry, user context. Yeah, my bad. So this is user context dot. Yes, user context.provider, right? Cool. And what we'll have here is we are going to just pass through the children, basically, so props.children. Cool. And we have the prop types here is going to have children, which is React node. Beautiful. And here we have props, and these props are going to be type of user provider props. Beautiful. Okay, sounds good. So user context.provider value is missing. That's correct. I will pass the value right away. But before that, let's, yeah, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, the way you want to do that, remember when I said this piece of state has to be global state now? So I'm actually literally just going to take out that piece of state from here, and I'm going to push that piece of state here. So this piece of state here is going to be a state that is going to live inside the user provider component, and it's going to become a global state by providing it through the context, because through the user context basically, but it's nothing special. It's just a piece of state, and we are providing it through the context, and that will make it go everywhere. Cool. Now, another thing here, just to keep TypeScript happy and to keep me happy, to be honest. Whenever TypeScript happy, I'm happy. So the user context here is we are going to pass the user and the set user as well. So let's do that. So the value here is going to be user and set set user. Yes, I need to adjust this a little bit. User and set user. So both of them go here, and this is incorrect way of typing value. Awesome, cool. So that goes up here, and then just to make sure that I keep TypeScript happy, what I will do here is I'm going to declare type, call it user context, and that type will have user on it, yes, which is going to be user, which is already imported, and then we will have set user, which is going to be a function, and I usually just like to hover over here and copy this, yes, and paste it here, and save this. It will complain, doesn't know what this is, just yep, beautiful, import these, and we are good to go. And that type is going to be the type of the context here, and it's going to complain that empty object is not really that type, and I don't know an elegant solution for this, but I simply just cast that empty object to user component, user context type as well. So this is really good. We have kept TypeScript happy, and wherever we use the user everywhere in our app, we will still keep the properties of that user as well. Perfect. Now, this component is really good, and this component is going to provide the user everywhere we want, and we are going to actually use that component. We are going to actually use that component by wrapping our app into that component. So let's come here. Doesn't really matter much, so let's just go UserProvider here. Yes, cool. And let me take that out and put it here. Save it. Okay, so we have UserProvider now, and UserProvider is wrapping around all of this. Good stuff. Now, what I will do here is start using that context. So what I will do is I will say that I am expecting user and set user, right? And this is going to equal use context. So I'm going to use the use context hook. And since I exported already the user context, I'm just going to import it like this. And now I have a user and a set user. And this is brilliant because I'm now setting the user to the data. There's no need to console log anything anymore, and I don't really need the user anymore. And that will hopefully work. User is not defined. Where is that? Oh, there is a user down there. Actually, yeah, we don't need this anymore. Yeah, well, might as well. Let's keep it for now. Okay, let's try this now. So if I go user one now, yeah, everything is working as expected, but the good thing is this piece of state that we have just made kind of globally, it's in the context and it's available everywhere in our app, and that is absolutely beautiful. Okay, let's quickly start using that new piece of state everywhere in the app, and I will start showing you how awesome this code is. Okay, cool. So we have user context, and I don't think we need this anymore. We already know it works, so we don't need user from here. Okie dokie, so that's beautiful. And then you get the data, and then you set the data from here. And when you log out, you set the user to null. Yeah, that's fine for now. Easy peasy, no problem. Okay, good. Okay, now let's go to the other components that where we want to actually consume that piece of state. So let's go to the hero section. Okay, yep, take that out. And what we have here, instead of my name, what we will do here is, actually, you know what? Yes, what I will do is I'm going to consume the user from the use context, which is going to be user context. Beautiful. And what I will do here is I will say if there's yeah, if there's no user, then you say something like hello, log in below. All right, cool. And if there is a user, then you go hello, and then you go boom, oopsie, boom, yep. And then that's exactly why I did all that trickery with TypeScript to make sure that I keep the types wherever I'm using that piece of state everywhere in my app, and I'm going to use the first name here. Cool. So if there is actually a user right now, so we can set it to nothing. So yeah, hello, login below. Let's make this smaller. Okay, this looks good. So this is the this is the first component to use the global state. Beautiful. And let's go and consume that global state somewhere else as well, which is going to be in the details card. Same thing here. What I will do is I will take out this and say something like, actually I first need to consume that context. So const user equal use context, yes, of user context, beautiful, and then just say user end, right? Yeah, user end. Actually no, let's just do this. User dot first name. Yep, that will work because I want to do something else just in a second. And then here will be date of birth. And then here, this is not the right way to spell registration. You're welcome. Date, actually this is registration date. And this is here is going to be email. And then on the address part, we will do, I think it's a little bit complicated on the address part. It goes like, it goes like what? It goes like this, I think. User.oopsie. User.location, yes, and inside that location we can have like, I don't know, no, not city, there's something else that makes sense. Yeah, street. Okay, oops. Okay, and then we have user.location. What else? City. Yep, and then a comma maybe, and then user.location. Country. Yeah, that works for now, and then just ended up with a dot. Beautiful, and then just replace all these user with user. Yes, beautiful. Okay, cool. So if there is a user, do all of this stuff. If there is no user, just do nothing, basically, do undefined. Yeah, cool. And the reason why I want to do it that way is because I want to be a fancy web developer, and I'm never going to show that details card unless there is actually a user. So what I will do here is I'm going to also consume that user equal use context of the user context here, and then I am going to wrap the details card in collapse, right, and then this collapse is going to be in when there is actually a user. Beautiful. If there's no user, this is not going to show up, and if there is a user, it's going to show up. The last piece of the puzzle is going to be, where is it? Actually, the nav bar. Yes, beautiful, the nav bar. So instead of this, what I will do also is going to be user dot, we don't have user, still need to import it. So let's do that quickly. User, it should be simple to copy and paste that line, you know. User context, beautiful. Anyway, here let's just do user dot first name. Cool, and this is going to be either user dot picture, either user dot picture or just empty string. Beautiful, so that will work. And we also go back to the hero section, right? Yeah, do the same thing with the hero section. Yes, here. So src equals user dot picture. Oi, what's up? User dot picture or just an empty string. And that's it. So what happens now when I log in is I'm going to set that global state everywhere to be whatever comes back from the API, which I'm handling separately in my custom hook. And whenever I change that, it changes everywhere, and only the components that are using that context are going to be re-rendered. And I'm also handling errors as well. So if there is an error in the request field, then the set state is going to be null as well, which is there is no user basically, which is really, really good stuff. Where is that coming from? That is coming from the login component here, because I'm setting the user to data, and get user here is, oops, what are you doing now? Where is the hook itself? Yes, this is where the hook happens. And if there is an error, we return, we set the error to error as well. So we don't return anything basically. And this is why we set the user to null. And that's why things like this happen. And that's perfect, actually. That's really, really good. There's a couple of things to be kind of like, yeah, made better here. You can also actually, yeah, just in case, like I want to also show you this, you can actually import that context here, which is actually going to be better. Use context, which is going to be the user context. Yeah, so you can import that context here, and instead of returning stuff, you can simply just set the data. set the user itself. Set the user to the data, and you have the user here, and you don't want to even return the user itself. And the reason why I like this is now we can go back to the login component, and we don't really do anything. We don't really need to set anything at all. So we take that out. Yep, and take that out. And with this guy doesn't really need to subscribe here. So what we do is we are simply just going to trigger the get user function from the custom hook, and the custom hook will handle the global state as well. And I absolutely love this pattern because you have everything that you have about this user inside this custom hook, and if you want to change anything, it's all in one file. In fact, we can simply just go here and do something like const logout user. One second. Const logout user here, which is going to be another function, and this function is going to do nothing else but set the user to null, right? And it's also going to reset the error just in case. Set the error also to null, or null or false. False is more accurate. Cool. And then I will actually just export this function as well. Let's go back to our login component, and instead of doing this here, what I will do is I'm going to just log out user here. Log out user, yes, and I will add it here. Log out user. Look at this. So now when I also log out, what happens is I'm setting the user to null from the main, from the custom hook. And this is really, really good because now we have everything related to the user into this one file. And this is absolutely perfect because you imagine the user has maybe, I don't know, the user might have some bookings. So const get bookings equals async, go grab the booking, go grab bookings, grab bookings, yes, grab bookings first, and then set global booking state, global bookings, whoa, sup, whoa, booking state, set global booking state, right? And then what you do is you simply just export that as well. So get bookings, and that guy can actually can take the user number as well, which is going to be a string. And that's it. And that's it. And wherever you want to use it, anywhere in your app, what you do is you simply just from the user get the bookings and pass the user number or user ID or whatever, and it's going to grab the bookings. And if you have another global state for the user, so you have bookings provider, or you have, I don't know, books provider, or whatever it might be, it will be set from here as well. And that's absolutely brilliant because everything related to the user is going to be into this one file. So actually more appropriately to rename this to get user bookings. Get user bookings here is perfect. So anything that you want to have inside your user, anything that you have to do with your business logic, any interaction with the backend is going to be here. And more importantly, you can integrate this custom hook with your context. So if you want to have a user context, you want to have, I don't know, set bookings, you want to have set bookings here, yeah, and then that is going to be use context as well. I don't know, there might be another one called bookings context, right? Bookings context. So you want to have, there can be as many contexts as you want. It doesn't matter. And each of these contexts is a piece of global state. And you can imagine having one custom hook for your user, anything that has to do with the user, another custom hook, anything that has to do with the bookings themselves. It depends where you want to have this logic be, here or there. It doesn't really matter. It depends on you. In fact, you can have this login, this function to get the user bookings to be on the custom hook for the bookings, and you can actually grab the user ID. You can actually do it here too. So I know that by the time I call this guy, I have the user, right? So and when I grab the bookings, I already have access to user.id. So I already have access to it. So I can go grab the booking of the user which is logged in because I have it from the state, right? And I can grab it and set it to the global state. And what will happen then is my logic for grabbing the user booking is going to be very simple. I'm just going to do this. Get user bookings. Simple. And this one function that's going to be coming from here, from the user. Let's actually do that just to show you what's up. Get the user bookings, right? this very simple one function that's going to be exported from the context, from the custom hook, is very simply just going to do everything for you. It's going to check, grab the ID of the user that's logged in, and grab the bookings from the API and set it to the global state, all in one place. How perfect is that? And React is going to do everything else. React is going to handle which component is going to be re-rendered, which component is not going to be re-rendered, and all that stuff. Because like you see here, if it like, yeah, there's no state, this goes out, this is affected, this is affected. It's perfect. Like this pattern for me is just brilliant. And my like everything is kind of centralized, but not annoyingly centralized. There is no boilerplate. And maybe this pattern didn't exist before, but now that it does, you probably want to start using it more. Because in my opinion, this is like, I don't know, like a really, really good way to handle global states. So you wrap everything in one context for the user, one context for bookings and so on, but you don't need to have all these contexts be spread over like that. You can connect all these contexts together with your custom hooks. So your custom hook will kind of like use these contexts, and you can export really, really smart functions like this. And if you need any local loading states or error states, you can also export them from there. And like I showed you earlier, if you want to set loading here to true, then the consumption of this specific invocation of the use user hook is not going to affect the other piece of state where you actually log in the user. Although it's the same kind of like local state here, but because you use two different invocations, one to log in the user and the other one is to get the user bookings, these are going to be totally separate states, and they're not going to be affected. And in my opinion, this is really, really perfect. The only thing I'll change here is to not use Axios. Yeah, basically not to use Axios. Axios is great, but there are different better patterns, so I would actually use SWR, and that will also improve the performance by caching you these requests, and wherever you get them from, if you've already done them before, it's just going to be passed into the state directly. And I think that's it. So yeah, this is my personal review of how to write global state in React using React APIs, and I think this is perfect example of how far React has come. And you can see here, this is simply just like declaring global state, which is a simple state, and it's going to be passed into the context, and that's it. And then you can combine that with your like custom hooks, like I mentioned here, and it's very, very, very powerful pattern when you combine custom hooks with context hook as well. It's really, really good, and you can have global state management out of the box with React. You don't need to install any other library, and it's really clean code. It's very easy to follow through. The folder structure is really good. You have the hooks separately, and you understand that the hooks is where you have your business logic, and you have the providers. You can actually have a folder called providers where you provide different kind of contexts, and you can be type safe as well. So it's really, really nice. Wherever you use the user, anywhere in your app, you can have all these types in the user, and you know exactly what you're working with. So I think this is perfect. From my opinion, from a review point of view, this should be the standard way you handle React global state. Unless there is something very specific that you want to do that this pattern doesn't do for you, only then you want to use one of the other libraries that we're going to be discussing in the next two videos, and I'll be discussing Redux and Mobx. That's it, guys. That's it for this video. Sorry, it's a bit long, but you know, like, you gotta dig into the details, man. That's the only way you're gonna understand this stuff. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Give this video a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments below, and also let me know in your company or in your work which kind of like library or pattern that you use to handle global state. Thanks, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.